Hey all YouTubers out there, thanks for joining in. Today we're doing something a little bit different. We've got my good friend's 1972 Toyota FJ40 in here. It's Land Cruiser. It's pristine, it's beautiful. He bought it at a Mecum auto auction a couple years ago, and he's done quite a bit of work to it, and he's got a lot going on right now, so we figured we'd help him out a little bit with it. Now, this thing is all original. It's got some history to it, which we'll talk about later on. We will say that it is from Colombia and was shipped to the United States. It's pretty unique. He's got a lot of original photos and things of that nature. So it's got some cool history. It actually has a 2F engine in it, 4-speed. It's got an Old Man Emu suspension lift and some 33s. It's got heat. You know, we're talking about putting some vintage air on it, but what we're doing here is we're working on the brakes. It's got a 4-wheel disc conversion on it, and we're trying to get those dialed in, and also we're trying to get it a little more drivable. He wants to drive this thing, or plans on driving it to work every day and being a driver, which he's driven it quite a bit, but we're just trying to make it a little more friendly. So we're putting a Holley Sniper fuel injection on it. I'll show you a little bit about this thing. It's got a hard top. It had a soft top on it at one time. The paint is beautiful. Here's the interior. Got peanut butter seats. It's got the benches in the rear, which is pretty cool. So we're pretty excited. I'm pretty excited to tear into this thing, and we might do a little bit of transmission work too. Do a little swap on that. But here, I'll just give you a little walk around. Like I said, it's in great shape. A little shot of the inside of the engine compartment. Okay, we unboxed the Sniper, the Holley Sniper kit for this 2F. It came from Mosley Motors, which is right here, Mosley Motors. As you can see, we have a black anodized Holley Sniper EFI. It comes with a fuel pump, a new low-car throttle cable, the brain, coolant temp sensor. Not sure what this is for. Oh, that's a base gasket for the top of the carb, or the top of the throttle body. Fuel line, a couple of pre and post filters, and a bag full of hardware, including spacers and AN fittings, and then we've got an O2 sensors here, or O2 sensor bung and clamps. We've got O2 sensors. There's nothing in there, and then we have more wiring. It says it comes with everything it needs. I haven't talked to him yet, but we have to run a return line to the pump, or actually a return line to the tank. It's an inline pump. I think it's based off, if I'm not mistaken, it's a GSL 392, a Walbro pump. Yes, Walbro Automotive Fuel Pumps. We've actually started disassembling some of the top of the motor here, or took the carb off. As you can see here, we've got it comes with this base plate, which is a Mr. Gasket base plate, and it's drilled specifically to fit this, and that adapts that to the throttle body. This engine at one time had fuel injection on it. As you can see, here's a coolant temp sensor. We're going to do something a little different. We'll run what's on the kit. There's quite a few vacuum lines. We're going to have to do a little work to this guy. I noticed the vacuum advance on the distributor. We've got probably a vacuum leak here. Probably a vacuum leak here, as you can see with this vacuum hose, and we're just going to tidy things up, and hopefully we get this thing running. Hopefully we get this thing running a little better. It ran good, but just drivability. We're looking for better drivability. You can see the old air cleaner used to be in this general vicinity, but we're going to go ahead and start putting some things together and see how it all bolts up. So what we've gotten done so far on this beast is I've taken the old radiator out. We've got a different alternator. We're working on belt spacing, trying to get it corrected. We've got the old radiator out. We found some vacuum hoses that need replaced. I've pulled the carb off, put in the temp sensor. We've got some rags, or socks stuffed in the intake. Found out I need a couple of intake gaskets. I'm going to make a heat shield this morning, and it goes under the base plate to kind of pull some of that heat away from the throttle body. I think that'll help a little bit. I mean, I really, again, you've got a combination intake exhaust manifold here, so it's not as efficient as when you separate them. It heats up, and they don't generally, pulling warm air or hot air into the engine, it's not going to make as much horsepower as cool air. But again, I mean, we're dealing with what we deal with. We been underneath, pulled the fuel pump off, obviously drained the radiator, pulled the old mechanical fuel pump off. We put the block off plate on for the mechanical fuel pump, and then pulled the clutch, the bell housing cover off, or the clutch cover on the bottom of the bell housing. I really think I'm going to build this. I'm planning on building this heat shield today, and we'll see what else we're going to get into, but I'll probably go ahead and try to plumb the fuel system as well. I think that's going to be the next thing on the list. We've got to add the new electric fuel pump. We got to tap the tank and put a bulkhead fitting in for a return. And there's a few odds and ends I have to run to ground here. I really can't put the fuel injection on until I get those two gaskets. There's a base plate that goes in here. It's got a vacuum port on it, but it sits here, and it seems they make them remanufactured, but originals, it seems, are more sought after from what I can tell. I've got it sitting over here in the box. The factory base plate is right here, and it requires a gasket top and bottom, and we don't have that gasket. We've got a couple other gaskets here for the new Holley Sniper, but overall we don't have those gaskets. We also have to do a little brake work on here. I think this master cylinder is the bore's too small. It's got a really soft pedal, and it's not moving enough fluid. It just doesn't seem to be getting the job done. So we've got another master, and then this looks like a GM alternator to me, and yeah, it's a Delco. We've got the other alternator that was on here, but this one has a dual pulley, and if you can look down through there, it lines up a lot better with everything else we got going on. The other belt was significantly out of square. So we're going to try to go back with an electric fan. I'm hoping we got enough room. If not, we'll keep the mechanical fan and move on. But I'm hoping we can get an electric fan in there. Again, we're going back with an aluminum replacement style radiator that bolts in, and we'll keep it going from here. I've mocked up the fuel system here. As you can see, we've got a pre-filter, the pump, and then we've got a post filter here. We've got our fuel injection hose, fuel injection clamps, all that stuff. this comes in the kit. I'll show you where I'm planning on putting it. We've got the line coming out of the tank right here. We're going to run it up along the frame rail. It's kind of hard to see. It's kind of dark. It's going to run it up along the frame rail, up on top, next to the brake line. And we're going to put that pump fuel filter assembly in this general area right on top of the fender. Might use this guy and bolt it up right here. And then the post filter will come up and we'll run it on around the front of the engine. So that's the plan to get the fuel system squared away. As you can see, here's the existing line coming out of the tank, and it comes with all the fittings, and we'll go ahead and try to get that all mounted up and get it in a good spot and see how it fits. I'll post some video when I get a little closer. So we finished off the day. We got the throttle body kind of mocked up here. The fuel injection, the EFI. So this kit came from Mosley Motors, which specializes in these FJ swap kits. And you know, this is not an OEM. This is a Colombian spec or South American spec. So I'm not sure if we've got something a little different going on here or what. But I'll show you. If you see right here, we've got some issues where some things are crashing between the master and the actual plenum, I guess you would say, or the top of the throttle body. You know, they sent this bracket. I'm not so sure if it's the right one. I'm going to call them tomorrow, try to figure it out. But supposedly this bracket is supposed to go in this direction and pull on that throttle cable this way. The way Holley intends is for you to pull this way back, but that doesn't work, so you've got to use the lower brackets. And I think I can make it work if I cut all these off, but I want to ensure that that's gonna, you know, be acceptable. I think for the most part we can get it going. I mean, I can make another bracket for this throttle cable that it should sit out in this general area here. You know, I just hate to buy a kit per se, and you buy a kit per se and it's supposed to bolt up. Now we do have the fuel pump mounted, got the fuel lines routed. You can see there's the fuel pump, and we've got to put another filter in. I think I'm going to change the routing a little bit. I think I'm going to, instead of running it over the front of the engine, I think I'm going to run it over the back and bring it back into the throttle body, which may change my thoughts on a fitting down here. I think I want to pick up a 90-degree fitting and go ahead and loop it back towards the starter and back towards the firewall. I've got to pick up a couple other fittings anyway. The kit was supposed to come with a bulkhead fitting where you put the return line in for the actual the tank, because we're using external pump. So I've pulled the sending unit out, and I think I can get my fingers over here, and we're going to put the return right here. So I've popped a hole in the floor. I've got the tube run. We've got it up in this, you know, this general area right here is where I think we can do it. I've got some different types of pliers that I can stick in there and actually pop it up, put a washer on there and get her going. I think that's where we're going to do the bulkhead, but I've got to get a couple of fittings. Overall, this is definitely hasn't been a bolt-on.